Communication. We talk about it, but what exactly is communication, and why is it so essential for us as human beings and for our students? We're going to go through some parts of our workbook right now to really think about what are communication modalities and how do our students who use augmentative communication, or maybe should use augmentative communication, how are they currently communicating? So let's start by looking at some of the modes of communication. As you can see from the list here and in your workbook, there are a lot of ways that we communicate. As a matter of fact, most of what we communicate with each other is not through verbal speech. It's through all these other things. Our facial expressions, our gestures, our tone of voice, all of those things have a huge impact on what we're trying to get across to other people. We also need to consider why we communicate. I know that as adults, I communicate for a huge variety of reasons. Sometimes I'm requesting something, I want something. Sometimes it's to express my feelings. I'm so happy, or oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm gonna do, right? Sometimes it's to protest. No, stop. What are you doing, right? Sometimes I'm asking questions. Actually, I like to ask a lot of questions. So it might be like, where are we going? What's gonna happen next? Why are you doing that? We label and describe. Little kids especially are great at this. They'll be like, ball or dog or anything like that. We also use communication all the time in order to be social. Now, sometimes that's chatting with a friend. Sometimes it's using our phones to communicate by text or by email. All of those are communication methods. A lot of times we'll make comments. Someone tells you something and you're like, ew, gross, right? Those are all comments. They're also social because they're keeping the conversation going. And then of course, so often we want to share experiences with others. We like to tell people stories or give people advice and let them know that, hey, yeah, I've been through something like that before, and it shares a closeness with us or provides an education. So let's go over what some of these things are. And I want you to think about your student or students who have some complex communication needs. And I'm going to be using that word repeatedly during all the videos. Complex communication needs means that they don't communicate the way that maybe your typically developing child does. They are lacking in verbal speech, or maybe they're lacking also in, facial expressions. Maybe they don't have the ability to hear very well, and so they don't pick up on a lot of things. But these are kids who need more than just speech in order to get their message across because of some kind of underlying medical condition. It could be autism, cerebral palsy, could be a developmental delay, any of those things. So requesting, right? We request for a lot of things, and we see this a lot in the schools, that we want our students to be able to request, especially when they're upset. What's wrong? Why are you mad? What do you want? Right? So think of some things that your students currently request or would want to request if they were able to do so. Expressing our feelings. Go through some of the feelings that you like to express, and then take a look and consider, what do your students really want to express? Now, sometimes your students don't have the words yet to express those things, so we need to provide direct instruction to help them know that when I'm really amped up because something is hurting, that maybe I feel mad. Right? They might not have that word yet, but part of language and part of communication is learning those words so that we can express them to others. Protesting or refusing. We definitely all have seen children and adults who protest or refuse through big behaviors. They're having a big emotion and they just let it out physically or by screaming or something like that. We want to help our students learn that there are other ways to protest in a way that maybe is more likely to, build relationships and meet expectations of whatever the culture is that your student is in, be it home, school, with the community, etc. asking questions. So this one gets left out a lot for our complex communicators. We often remember, oh, well, this kid needs to be able to protest and they need to be able to request. But how often do you consider your kiddo or your student their ability to ask questions? So often, kids are confused. They're like, what's going on? What's happening next? Where's my mom? Why did you change the schedule? And if they don't have the ability to communicate those questions with others, it often leads to frustration or depression or just plain anger, right? So we need to be able to help our students ask questions so that they can get their needs met. Label and describing. I love being able to describe things to other people. And it's such an important language step as children are learning language. They need to know what something's called and a way to describe it so that other people know what they are talking about. Social routines. So a lot of these are very scripted and depending on the culture or the environment. They could be hello, goodbye, thank you, hi, how are you, right? But they could also be social routines that you use within your classroom of just scripts that you use going back and forth, like my name is blank, or today is Monday, right? These are all social routines that we use to build connection with each other, and they're really important to have within the classroom as well. Commenting, this is a great way to build rapport and also just to let people know what you're thinking, like so that little girl in the middle is like, ew, look at me. And then the little boy is like, I've got something to say, right? And then the other little boy is like, rah, rah, rah. These are all comments that our kids often want to make. If they're watching something that they love, let's give them the ability to tell everyone around them, I love this. This is awesome. And then sharing experiences. Our ability to share experiences is an essential part of our culture. We want to be able to tell other people what we did, what we want to do, our dreams, our hopes, all of those things. These often get left out when people are thinking about communication systems for their students or their children. We want to make sure that our students have the ability. It may not come initially. It takes a lot of time and a lot of work, but we want our kids at some point to be able to say anything to anyone about anything. If we just think of this as a safety precaution alone, which there's way more than that to sharing experiences. But if we only think of it as a safety precaution, don't you want your students to be able to say, somebody hit me? Right? We know that students with disabilities are much more likely to experience abuse over their lifetimes. We need these kids to grow into adults that can tell others when they're having safety concerns or when they're not being treated right. Okay, so from here, we need to take a look at one or more of your students. So go through in your head, maybe just start with one student for now, and go through and you're going to actually mark up on this page of your workbook how skilled they are in doing these things. Now, they don't have to be using their verbal speech to do these things. Like if you have a student that's very good at refusing or protesting because they throw things and they scream and it works, then I would give them a high score for that. But if you have someone that never asks a single question, right, then they're going to get a very low to 0 score. And you're going to fill it in, each little section there of the pie, fill it in, and then take a look at your wheel. How well is your student communicating these different things? So go ahead and pause this video and take some time to do that for at least one student. And you can do it for multiple students if you would like. All right, welcome back. So now we're going to start thinking about some important words in your student's life. These are the words that we're going to focus on right now. These are educational words. There are so many important words that your student needs as well for their family life. But right now, let's just think about important words for school. So let's go through and go ahead and make a list. Who are the important people that you want your child to be able to communicate about? I'm guessing it's going to be the names of lots of teachers, the names of their peers, the names of staff members with whom they interact. Go ahead and list all of those things in your workbook, and then come back and we'll look at some more important words. Okay, now let's look at important places in your school. So first, of course, we want the name of your school, right? But then also, what are the classrooms, cafeteria, bathroom, hall? What are all the important places that we want our student to be able to communicate about? Okay, now we're going to get personal. You're going to think of one student in particular here. What are that student's preferred items? So if you have a student that when they come to school, they immediately go straight for the alphabet, they love to put things in alphabetical order, line up the ABCs, all of that, that's a preferred item. We want to make sure that your student has the ability to request that, to comment on it, and to share experiences about it. So take some time and put down a list of important words for at least one of your students. All right, foods. Now, some of our students have very specific foods that they eat. Maybe they bring their lunch in and their snacks from home. If that's the case, then go ahead and list those here. If you have a student that's eating cafeteria food, then it's a little less clear, but you probably know the general routine of every, second Thursday, they're serving chicken nuggets in the cafeteria and your student loves chicken nuggets. So list the foods that you know that your student really does prefer, even if they're not always available, the ones that they have on a semi-regular basis when they're at school, because food's important. Most of us want to be able to talk about food, to request, just like before, to request it, to comment it, to share an experience. Okay, important words for activities. These are the things that maybe you do in your classroom that your student just loves. So they might be certain games, they might be going around the room, they might be your circle time. Maybe you do some baking sometimes in your classroom, or cooking in general. Maybe there's something outside on the playground that they just love. Make sure to include those activities as well. Okay, these are the fun words. Now, unfortunately, I can't list these fun words for you because fun words often depend on the child's age, their location, and their dialect. So when I was growing up, fun words might be awesome, cool, that's incredible, things like that. I know that language changes really fast and really depends on what is going on in your school. So what you're going to want to do is find a same age peer and ask them, what are the fun words that you guys are using to communicate with your peers? You want to make sure that your student has access to those same exact words. Okay, sometimes we need some special verbs that are not already in the system. These are maybe dancing, or maybe your student likes to run. What are the verbs that you're going to need for your student to be successful? And then finally, phrases. These are going to be the full-on phrases that they need to use within the classroom and in the community. Good examples of this are, I have to go to the bathroom. Right? That's an important one. Or I'm hungry, right? So we're looking at full phrases. It might be a social phrase like, how are you? Or good morning, Mrs. So-and-so. Those could be phrases as well. So think of the phrases that would be great to have in their communication device pre-programmed so they don't have to find every individual word. Or maybe they have a gestalt that they use all the time that would be really helpful to have in their phrases as well. Like, for example, when my kids were little, they used to watch Dora the Explorer. Well, I made them watch Dora the Explorer. And one of the phrases in there was swipe or no swiping, right? So maybe your student understands that swipe or no swiping means don't take my stuff. So that might be an important phrase to have in their device, because whenever someone is taking their stuff, that might be their go-to of, oh, if I say this, it means I don't want anyone taking my stuff. go ahead, fill out your entire section of your workbook, and talk to your colleagues, talk to your peers, talk to your speech language pathologist, and figure out what are going to be the most important words for your student to help them be as successful as possible within your classroom and their educational journey.